I cannot believe what we are witnessing as the player signed to be the Phillies' real deal closer may be shaping up to be exactly that. You may have written off Jordan Romano, but he did not write back as he is just finding his stride on this Phillies season. I want to break down the exact role that he brings to this bullpen and why he may be exactly as advertised despite the Rockies start. Let's dive into a little bit about this bullpen. We know that it's been a significant concern with this Phillies team, with Romano right at the forefront of things, but I'm recording this after the first half of the doubleheader for this Phillies team today, and Romano looked absolutely filthy. I would argue that final inning, that scoreless ninth inning that he did pitch, is the best that he has looked in a Phillies uniform. I'm going to get into exactly why and a couple more stats to get into it, but before I do so, I do want to remind you guys, as always, to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, only 25.6% of you guys watching these videos have subscribed to us here at Phillies Digest just yet. Let's get this Phillies Digest family continuing to grow as we are just hitting the stride of this season. The Phillies are playing some of their best baseball that we have seen to this point. Truly does feel like they've turned a corner to an extent, and obviously baseball is a marathon. We got a long time to go before we start talking ourselves into this playoff push, setting up for another Red October, but feeling pretty good about the way things are changing. Now, I first want to start off with a little bit of just the status of Jordan Romano. First, let's highlight a little bit on how he's been overall on the season. He's pitched 16 games, 14.1 innings pitched, 3 home runs allowed, 14 strikeouts, 11.3 hits per 9 innings there. The ERA still sitting at 8.79, but we know that is pretty diluted due to the difficult start of the season. And that kind of brings me to the point of what I'm most impressed with Jordan Romano. We've seen this sort of time and time again in Philadelphia. It is a pressure cooker, unlike other cities. This is other cities here. This is different than pitching for the Toronto Blue Jays. And to his credit, Jordan wore that on his sleeve. He talked about that was a reason why he wanted to come here, that he remembered playing here as a road team and noticing the intensity of the crowd on a random afternoon game, how Citizens Bank Park is still filled to the rafters with the crowd bringing it there, and he's finally delivering to that level of pitcher here. Now, to touch on a couple of his stats here, we know that Jordan Romano did strike out the side in the ninth inning for the save. That slider looked absolutely filthy once again. He's pitched 8 times since the big implosion, which once again is what is diluting sort of his overall stats on the season. But in those 8 times, he's pitched 7 2/3 innings, allowed just 5 hits, 1 earned run, walked 2, and struck out 10. The Phillies and Cardinals are getting ready to play as I set up to record this now, so we will see how things shape out in the second half, but do want to give Romano his flowers. Full expectation is that he will not be pitching in that game. But I do want to acknowledge the bullpen as a whole turning things around. A shout out to our very own Luke Arcaney, who was in the press box today and has a quote that I want to highlight next. But he tweets out from the Phillies notes that despite some early bullpen troubles, this stat might surprise you. The Phillies are 18-1 this season when leading after 6 innings. And to take things a step further, they are 19-0 when leading after the 8th inning there, which is a pretty telling statistic. Now, Rob Thomson himself hears the noise about the lack of moves that were made this offseason and wanted to show a little bit of love to Jordan Romano here. So he was asked post-game about what he's bringing to the team and finding his groove, and his quote is, "There's been a lot made about our front office not doing anything this offseason, and that's a pretty big move. He was outstanding today, and boy was he in Jordan Romano there." So shout out to him. And by the way, in comparison to Jeff Hoffman, who we all know and love, has been a tough stretch for Jeff Hoffman there. And that's sort of the gamble. I'm not here to celebrate Jeff Hoffman's downfall by any means, but I do think it is worth contrasting how these guys look. That since April 20th, and these stats being before today, which once again was another scoreless inning on the back of Romano there, that since April 20th, Jordan Romano has pitched 6.2 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, a 1.35 ERA. In contrast, Jeff Hoffman has pitched in 8 innings, allowed 12 hits, 10 earned runs, 1 walk, 14 strikeouts, and 11.25 ERA. So I am rooting for both these guys. I do wish Jeff Hoffman well over there. That, again, not a guy I'm celebrating the downfall for or have any hatred in my heart, but it will be interesting to kind of compare these over the test of time to which of these sort of recovery projects that we know Romano specifically was a buy low guy that the Phillies were believing could get back to the all-star version of himself. Through the early parts of this season, did not look to be the case, but he very well may be turning a corner here. Now, a couple other points that I did want to pull out here. For starters, just looking at the depth chart overall for this Phillies bullpen. So pull up these numbers here. A couple guys I want to dive into. Jose Alvarado, it was a bit of a strange performance today in the first half of this doubleheader. He did not even get through his inning, did not settle in, put a couple runners on. But what did that lead to is Orion Kirkring stepping on the mound and absolutely slamming the door shut. Now, we've been extremely positive on Alvarado for the most part of the season, but I think the thing to always keep in mind, which is unfortunately the case with Jose, there will be these stretches where the control issues show face once again. When he is on, when he is live locked in, when he is pitching to the best of his abilities, there is a case for him being one of the best relievers in baseball. But sort of the variance that comes with him is there are those stretches where those control issues pop to the forefront and make it really difficult to work. I do respect and appreciate Rob Thomson sort of seeming to have a feel for that today. I think in general, when looking at the larger part of Alvarado's career and Thomson overall as a manager, sort of stylistically, he's willing to kind of die on the sword and let these guys play through things. It was important to get a win at the first half of this doubleheader, and he was proactive in making sure that Alvarado, who did not have it today, was not the guy that did blow that game. So shout out to Topper. Shout out to, I'm not worried about Alvarado. He will be just fine. He will settle in once again. Just an unfortunate performance today. But I think the bigger story in that it was Kerkering stepping up and slamming the door shut. There's been a little bit too much made about the struggles of Orion Kerkering. I know me myself have addressed that as well. He is a guy who has been forced to the forefront of this bullpen at a more rapid rate than just about any player that I can remember. Let's not forget that as a rookie, this guy barely pitched in the regular season. I believe he had 3 appearances in the regular season before he was thrown into that playoff rotation and looked at as a pretty high leverage guy. He's a miles better pitcher at this point in the game than it was at that being 2 years ago at this point, him in his 3rd season. And we really haven't seen a significant amount of struggle for him. I think this season is probably the most turmoil that he has dealt with as far as a production standpoint and what he's brought to the table. And it was really nice to see him look like the dominant version of himself against pretty much the heart of that Cardinals lineup here. Now, to talk about the bullpen a little bit more overall, there are some names that we still need to get here there. Matt Strahm, again, he has not pitched to the peak of his abilities this season, but not a guy that I'm worried about in the left-hander that they are going to need. Joe Ross has pitched far better for this bullpen. Carlos Hernandez, Taijuan Walker even is a guy I do want to touch on a little bit more. We saw a dominant 3-inning performance from him out of the bullpen. A guy that I might make the case for that specific performance there is arguably the best that he has pitched in a Phillies uniform. And I do think, particularly on days like today where it is a doubleheader, I do expect to see Taijuan in the second half of things. And that doesn't strike fear into my heart the way it once did. This is not this nightmare, oh no, Taijuan Walker has to pitch. There's a little bit more to him this year. The increased velocity, there is kind of a pitchability and a fight on the mound. The dude battles in a way that I greatly respect, and he is willing to kind of pitch through things in a way that I think you see a lot of pitchers throw the talent. So shout out to Taijuan Walker. I am hopeful that he can reinvent himself and be a bit of a positive to this Phillies team. And even if it is not a guy that we are counting on from a playoff perspective, which I do think is unlikely for the record there, it is really important to get through the length of the grind, the marathon of the Major League regular season to ensure that you can get to this point and have your high leverage arms intact. My biggest fear with the struggles of this bullpen at the start of the season was still not the top end guys. It was that these mid-tier guys did not cut it, which put too much strain on the top guys. When you have to go to Alvarado and Strahm and Kerkering as your 3 guys on like an every night basis, they're going to wear down over the course of 162 games. So that we're starting to see a couple new faces pop up, to me, is really encouraging. I know we all hit the panic button on this bullpen very early in the season, myself included on that. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying this is dominant. I'm not even saying this is good enough to be the contending level bullpen that the Phillies need them to be. But we can settle in and relax a little bit that they are finding their stride. Baseball is a marathon for a reason, and I'm really encouraged by the version of just about all of these bullpen pitchers that we have seen, with Jordan Romano certainly at the forefront of that conversation. So shout out to this guy to battling through a little bit of turbulent times in his first arrival in Philadelphia. To me, it's even more impressive that he could have had that horrible start, and we've seen plenty of guys fold in this exact setting where they're not feeling it. You start to feel the boos of the crowd. They're coming out. And even now, I will admit that Jordan Romano checks into the game, there is the, oh no, in the back of my head. But it is starting to break that because the stuff has been nastier. He has pitched better, and he just looks straight up more confident out there. The movement is back. The velocity is up, and he looks much closer to the all-star version of the guy that we believed we signed. So hopefully that is here to say for Jordan Romano there. I also for sure want to highlight that I think it's awesome that Rob Thomson's sort of sticking up for his guys here. For all the critiques of him as a manager, that is one thing that I think he does an excellent job of feeling the pulse of the locker room a little bit and really riding for his guys. That is how you keep a clubhouse behind you, and I do think Topper has done just that. So we will see how things unfold for the rest of the season, but very encouraged by the version of this bullpen that is currently being put on display for this Phillies team. With all that said, it does not take too long for things to unravel, so we will keep the jury out at this point in the game, but an encouraging stretch, and I think they are still just 1 or 2 pieces away, but you got to live with what we got currently. Once again, before I do sign off here, do want to remind you guys, as always, to make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. 74.4% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed just yet. We do have a lot of baseball to get into here. Once again, our guy Luke Arcani in the press box today, getting the inside scoop, and we'll be back on this channel with me as well. So make sure you're tapping into all of that. Make sure you're dropping a like and any comments you have below. And do want to hear from you guys. What is your level of confidence in Jordan Romano? I was at about a 0 a couple weeks ago. I'm bumping that up. They're starting to believe a little bit that this is here to stay. So hopefully that trend continues. Regardless, want you guys rocking with us from start to finish this season. Appreciate you guys for tuning in this video here, and I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.